It's a bit of a weird age, like weird in a sense. I don't feel like I feel in my 30s, but I also don't feel like end of 40s. So like when you just start a new decade in your life, it's a bit of a weird mixed feeling.
Actually, it's interesting because I always hear the term midlife paired with the word crisis. I don't know any use of the word midlife without that. And I actually think that word on its own could actually be quite nice, right? Midlife. Hi, I'm Keelan. I'm Irish and I've been living in Berlin for the past 4 years. I'm a startup and scale-up product marketing manager. So my background has always been in product and marketing, mainly in tech companies. And I write a Substack called Brave Enough. And really what I'm doing is a weekly newsletter that explores our relationship with technology, our relationship with social media, and how this 21st century life impacts the social fabric.
Hi, I'm Tuba. I am living for the past 8 years in Berlin. Before that, I lived 12 years in the UK, so you will hear me a lot talking about my different experiences having lived abroad. I have been working in the corporate tech environment for the past 15 years in various roles, from marketing to sales, and now a more strategic role outside of my corporate job. I am an artist. I'm part of an artist collective in Berlin. I work a lot with ceramics, and I do write a newsletter on Substack called As Slow as Possible. Usually I reflect on things like creativity, how the society that we live in, this fast-paced environment, how it impacts our creativity, and all things well-being.
So we've been friends for almost 8 years, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels like longer, to be honest, sometimes. And I think the interesting thing that we've talked about a lot in the past months is that this was quite an interesting year for both of us in our lives, because I turned 30 and you turned 40.
Yes, exactly. So I turned 40 beginning of May, and only when we started chatting with Keelan about it, I'm like, what? We literally have exactly 10 years between us. And yeah, but we've been friends for so long. We have similar experiences, very similar lives, but also from a different perspective. Me being 40, Keelan being 30. It's a bit of a weird age, like weird in a sense. I don't feel like I feel in my 30s, but I also don't feel like end of 40s. So like when you just start a new decade in your life, it's a bit of a weird mixed feeling, because you're kind of finishing off with your 30s, but then you start in your 40s. And it's a bit similar for you, Keelan, right?
Yeah. I think you see a lot of those lists on Substack or Instagram or YouTube or whatever, where people do these recaps of, let's say, their 20s, or recaps of their 40s or their 50s and what they learned. But it can sometimes be really difficult to look in the other direction and feel like, okay, what's coming for me? Especially when you just feel like you're on the precipice of it and you feel like, okay, one chapter of my life is... Because we tend to divide these decades up to feel like chapters.
In my early 20s, I used to write a beauty and fashion blog. And my mom used to tell me, oh, wait till you're married, till you have children, then you will not be doing all this beauty and fashion. And I used to tell her, no, this is me. I'm genuinely interested in these things. But that said, I think my parents also had just very different lives. They came as immigrants to this country. They were like, it was about surviving in this country, like being exposed to racism, surviving, working in a factory. So there was just no time to think, oh, which coat can I buy this winter? Or like, which serum should I use for my face so I have less wrinkles or whatever? I don't think they didn't have the bandwidth to think about these kind of things.
They also didn't have the information, I guess, accessibility / overload that we have now. So if you think about it, when I read anything online or watch anything online about aging as a woman, it's talking about, okay, this is what you need to eat. You need to lift weights to reduce your risk of osteoporosis. You need to do this to support, when you move into perimenopause or menopause, this is what you need to do. I don't think there was any information about any of this at all available to our parents. So I think that that's also something that's really radically changed in the way that we're experiencing these decades.
But I remember at the beginning of the year, I'm not celebrating my birthday at all. I was really dreading turning 40. I said to my friends, I'm going to just spend it on my own. I don't want to see anyone. I just want alone time. In the end, I'm so happy that I did surround myself with my friends, because I also realized how blessed I am in my life to have all these amazing friends, all these amazing people who support me, who love me. And it was great to feel it on the day. But I do feel like it's not, I even wrote about this on my Substack, that the more I started researching, looking into what is even midlife, and then of course you've thrown the midlife crisis in your face and you're like, oh my God, am I in a crisis now? It doesn't feel like a crisis, but it's definitely confusion. But I would say the confusion is more what society pushes on us, or what I'm exposed to from society on the internet and all these kind of things. Because for me, it feels more like a reawakening, I call it, or waking up again and realizing, oh, I think now it's time to change things in my life again, maybe. And of course, it's a bit of a coincidence that I turned 40, and maybe these big milestones are times where you start reflecting on your life again. But I feel I started looking at my wardrobe again. I'm like, oh, maybe I should change my style. Maybe I should change my job. Maybe I should move somewhere else. But I also think it's partly the reason for it is because I have a lot of friends who have children now, who are getting married. And if you personally don't want to have children, you're like, okay, what big change can I make in my life to catch up with everyone or to be on the same level as everyone?
I wouldn't say that I was dreading my 30th birthday, but definitely around the time I turned 30 earlier in the year and in the months after, I definitely had these really intense periods of thoughts about my life, and not so much about my 20s or what happened, but it was more about things that I hadn't achieved yet that I knew were important to me, because I knew they were important to me when I was 20. And now I'm here 10 years later and they're still there. They're still important. And if I didn't achieve them or make enough progress at them, I was really thinking, okay, not so much thinking, oh, I wasted my time, because I think I did a lot in my 20s. And I also think that's part of the world that we live in now. I don't want to be caught in this trap of having to feel like I'm constantly productive and constantly achieving things, because I don't think that makes you happy either. But I think it was more, I had this feeling of, okay, if I really want these things, I have to put my nose to the grindstone a little bit and just make sure that I don't lose sight of them, because I don't want to get to 40 and think like, oh, I really would like to do that though. So it's not, it's trying to find this balance between, okay, I want to work hard and achieve things, but also not feeling like I have to constantly check a bunch of things off my list in order to feel good about myself. It's more like personal goals.
I can definitely resonate with that. I think part of I was dreading, or I was panicking, because there are still a lot of things I want to achieve in my life. I think the location one is where I live, the city one is actually a really interesting one. And the living in different cities was always one of my biggest goals in life. So that's why I moved to the UK with 21, even though it was planned to be 8 months, but then I ended up staying 12 years. But even when I moved to Berlin, I knew like even the day I moved, I knew this is only temporary. I will only live a couple of years here and then I will move and live somewhere else. So I always had this big desire to live in different cities, to experience the world. And parts of it, of course, I do a lot of traveling. So I do feel satisfied with all my travels. But still, I feel like I'm not done yet.
And I think that's also something that people expect or assume, that, you know, with a certain age, you just kind of stay in one place eventually. Like, you know, being young is for moving around. If you think of like early 20s, something like that, you think of people moving away. And then, I mean, the typical pattern would be you move away, you maybe live in a different country or a second country for a few years, and then people either stay in one of those countries or move back home. Do you see yourself as someone who will always travel around, or do you want to find somewhere permanent?
I do think eventually I would like to have a more permanent place, but at the moment I don't feel like I'm done. But what you said, it's a good point, Keelan. I think the reason why I feel conflicted at the moment, because I don't know any other person my age. Most people around me who are like 40 above, they're like, oh, I'm so grateful for my community. I have my friends. There is no way I would leave this city or like I would leave my home. It's very difficult to make new friends. So I stopped now telling people because I realize it's really impacting me in a bit of a negative way. It's confusing me on my own path, even with my close friends, because I realize, of course, everyone will also reflect their own fears when you share your plans. I do that too to people, so it's not like it's special to my friends. If you talk about something where I have a fear, I will probably also reflect my fear on you and say, oh my God, how can you, like, are you not worried? And I think to a certain extent, people are doing that by telling me, wow, that's like, are you sure you want to leave your community here and move to a city where you don't know anyone? But will you not be worried that you will not meet any new friends and that you will feel lonely? So that throws me off a bit.
But that's interesting, because do you think that's about your age? Because do you think they would say that to someone who's 20?
I think it is because of my age. There is just a certain stigma that the older you get, the harder it is to meet a new partner, to make new friends. I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, that's probably true, because the older you get, the more people are married, have family, so people have less time maybe to go to a party or to do a lot of different things. Although I don't want to generalize on it, because again, we've changed as a society. People have a lot later children, and I also have friends who don't want to have children. So I don't think you can generalize, but yeah, I mean, in your 20s, you just went to a party and you met 2 new friends. And then, you know, this is how I made friends in London. So, but I guess I know myself, and I know I'm a quite warm and like very good with people. So I feel like I would find my crowd even if I move somewhere else.
The other day, I was wondering, because we were talking a little bit preparing for this episode, and we were talking about, how when you reach these milestone ages as a woman, particularly 30 and 40, I mean, there's a lot of mixed signals about it anyway, about what society tells you have to be or what you have to do. Obviously, if you take a lot of the 90s, early 90s media that at least I grew up with, it was, you know, you see it as a theme in some TV shows even, that women after 29 begin to start lying about their age and getting really self-conscious about it. So I think that's really interesting. And I was also thinking, okay, if I'm 30 now, am I still young or am I old, or what do you call that? And I Googled what is middle age, and I got so many different answers. Some results were telling me that it starts at 45. Some results were telling me that it starts at 35. Then there's other terms that people use where they say young adult, older adult. And it feels very strange to be at this milestone because there's all these things going on in your head. You're thinking about your own life and like this chapter of your life that is closed, and what are you going to do with the next 10 years, because it's like a very symbolic feeling and number. But then you also have all of these external influences kind of telling you that this is what you should be, or you should have, or you should have done. And it ends up sometimes making you feel like you don't really know how to feel or how to see yourself. I was Googling because I was curious because I don't feel like a young adult anymore, or barely. So then I was thinking, but is that middle-aged? When does middle-age start? What are you in this? And I feel like 30 to 40, you're in this limbo before that.
Middle-age sounds for me like even older than midlife.
Actually, it's interesting because I always hear the term midlife paired with the word crisis. I don't know any use of the word midlife without that. And I actually think that word on its own could actually be quite nice, right? Midlife. And that's what it feels like. You're in this, you're not a baby anymore, but you're not old. You are really just in the middle of your life, which has so many great things about it. And actually midlife on its own sounds so nice. But you always hear it with midlife crisis.
You're like bang in the middle of life. You're living your life. You're a lot more confident. You have more money. You're more comfortable with yourself and with your life. I mean, I live on my own. I have a really nice flat. So it is like, all these years, it feels like you were kind of building up to be in this middle and fully enjoy life. I think I really liked this positive twist to it, because in the end, if you think about it, it shouldn't be seen like as a decline after that.
And that's so the way that it is pushed, obviously, in the media, but also it's actually been pushed to me in person by other women. I remember one time in work, I think it was my birthday, and someone asked me how old I was, and they said something along the lines of, "Oh, wait till you're 30, it's all downhill from there." I've had multiple people say that to me in different combinations of that sentiment. And that's just so negative.
When we decided to do this podcast, it wasn't about like us wanting to answer all these questions, but contemplate more about these questions that are swirling around in our mind.
I think it's important that we have these types of conversations, even if they don't have a conclusion, because I think women and those in the Flinta community will still think about it. And as you said earlier, they'll end up kind of maybe asking Reddit these types of questions. And obviously that's a really understandable platform to go to with those questions because it's anonymous. But I think that's part of the issue, is that these types of questions and insecurities, they feel really secretive and anonymous. And I think it's nice that we can have an open conversation about it, even if there isn't a conclusion.
Yeah, and I think for me, talking to you, I realized, wow, certain things that I'm asking myself, Keelan is asking herself as well. And she's 30, she's 10 years younger than me. So maybe it is also not necessarily directly related to me being 40, or maybe it's not an age-related thing. Maybe it is generally certain questions we do ask in life, no matter what our age is.
I'm really looking forward to talking about this and other topics more with you. And it's just so nice to connect with you. And I think what we would really love is also to connect with more people, real life or online, about this topic, because I just think the way that we change as we get older, it does hold a lot of angst, it holds a lot of insecurity, it holds a lot of mystery and a lot of excitement, and also a lot of fear. And I think unpacking these different things about our experience as women or those in the Flinta community is just a really great way to connect and kind of try to understand this life that we're all hurtling through.
Yes, and yeah, we would love to hear from you as well on your experiences and some of the questions that we've been asking each other throughout the podcast, what you have to say about it.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening, and see you next time.